The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Department of Defense is working with Google to help secure America's digital defense systems, from establishing cloud-based zero-trust solutions to deploying the latest AI technology. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
It's tourney time, and with FanDuel's Dog of the Day, you can get a daily profit boost during the College Conference Championships to bet on any underdog. So get ready to celebrate some upsets.
No one saw that coming, except for me, baby.
21 plus in present in select states. Opt-in required. Minimum plus 100 odds required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and OregonLive, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Chiara Profena. Together we take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today, we are exploring a different kind of trail, the Oregon Film Trail.
That's right, Chiara. The Oregon Film Trail is not really a trail at all, but a series of markers erected throughout the state at filming locations for popular movies and TV shows over the years. We're talking about stuff like Stand By Me, The Goonies, bunch of others. It's ostensibly a promotion for the state's film industry, but it's also a really cool excuse to take a road trip around the state.
Yeah, I've kind of seen them just kind of on my travels pop up all over the place. And we do have a very special guest today to talk to us all about the Oregon Film Trail. Kristi Turnquist, life and culture reporter for the Oregonian and OregonLive. Kristi, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You, Kristi, as I understand, know quite a lot about the Oregon Film Trail. It's something that you've reported on, right? You've been writing a lot of stories about this over the years.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's interesting because, actually before the official film trail kicked off, it sort of unofficially started in 2017 when, remember the old TV series Grimm that filmed here in Portland and was set here? Sort of as a commemoration of Grimm, they established a plaque in Pier Park in Portland. And that was kind of the unofficial start. The actual official start happened in 2018, and it was an idea sort of cooked up by the Oregon Film Office, kind of working with the Astoria Warrenton Chamber of Commerce and the Oregon Film Museum in Astoria, because Astoria has been, as we know, a really popular location. Obviously, the Goonies filmed there, and the Goonies has gone on to have several afterlives. It just remains popular. And Kindergarten Cop filmed there, Short Circuit, other things have filmed there. And, the Oregon Film Museum is there. So the very first sign was put up in 2018 in that Astoria area. And it's grown since then. Now there's more than 40 of these plaques, and they're all over the state. They're in Baker City, they're in Salem, they're in Brownsville. You mentioned Stand By Me, that's where that filmed, and that's a popular stop. So, they're in Portland. They're certainly over on the coast. It's become not only sort of a tourist thing, but the Oregon Film Office kind of likes to talk about it also as an economic development tool. It kind of encourages people to visit these communities around the state and spend money in the restaurants or the, places to stay, businesses, that kind of thing. So it's sort of conceived as a combination of let's celebrate, more than 100 years of filming on location in Oregon, and let's get people out there to these communities, either people who live in Oregon or people who are visiting here from out of state.
Yeah, and can you tell us a bit about what these film trail markers look like and what they kind of tell people? What makes them worth going out to see?
It's interesting. I mean, actually, Jamie has taken a lot of helpful photos of the markers, which I have used in stories. They're just little signs, and they include some information about what was filmed there, sort of some of the other locations used. For example, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is actually celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. It did quite a bit of filming in Salem at the State Mental Hospital, but it also did some filming in Depot Bay. So there are signs in both places sort of reflecting there was filming going on there. And basically, they're just kind of a way to remind people that filming happened here on location, and they're also a sign of kind of the growing popularity of film tourism, which is becoming quite a thing all over the country. The Oregon Film Office has partnered with Set Jetters, which is an app. You can download this app to your phone, and there's QR codes on the markers that are, the Oregon Film Trail markers set on these sites around the state. So then you take the app, you look at the QR code, and it gives you information about other local attractions and that kind of thing. So it all tries to sort of work together.
I love these film trail markers as like a sort of a source of state pride as like, someone who's from Oregon. Like every time I see a movie or a TV show that was filmed here, I always get so excited, to be like, oh my gosh, that's, this location. Oh my God, there's Silver Falls. Oh my God, that's, the Hawthorne Bridge. I'm just like a kid when I see these things. And whenever there's something that is, set in Portland, but filmed in inevitably Vancouver, BC, I'm like, wow, those obviously aren't our mountains. What are you talking about? So there's something about going to these places and being, and really feeling like, I don't know, a connection to the movie industry. It's like a sense of recognition for Oregon or something like that.
Oh, that's really true. I mean, and it's true because I'm born and raised in Oregon, so I have that same kind of local pride, and it goes beyond that to, for example, say a movie like Twilight, which has been again so phenomenally popular for all these years. Now, only the first movie in the Twilight series actually filmed in Oregon. I mean, it was set in Washington, obviously, but it did film in the sort of Portland metro area. St. Helens has been a big tourist attraction because of Twilight filming that happened there. Bella's house is located in St. Helens. Of course, there's also the Halloween Town, the rather popular Disney Channel kids movie that also filmed in St. Helens. That's kind of a different story. But yeah, it's fun to sort of see these because it does give you a sense of pride, I think, in our wonderful Oregon locations, which are so beautiful. And then also, if you enjoyed the movie, it gives you that extra special kick of, identifying with the place where it was filmed. And, I think it has appeal in that way in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the two that you mentioned, the Halloween Town and Twilight, those are the two that I'm most into. So those are the ones that I went to visit last October, actually. So took a road trip up to St. Helens, and we did the whole Halloween Town touristy thing with the square and everything. And then we visited Bella's house from Twilight. So it was a classic trip.
Oh my goodness. I just watched a documentary about film locations across the country and how they've become, again, such tourist attractions. And I'm pretty sure that they had a mention of not only the family that now owns the house, that was featured in the Goonies that has become popular. That's probably an understatement with visitors to Astoria. But I think they also had folks talking about that house in St. Helens. I think it's now rented out as an Airbnb or something.
I did see that. It was for at least a portion of time. I don't know if they're still doing that, but there was like one family that bought it and they were renting it out where you could stay in Bella's room and it would be stylized exactly the way it was in the movies with the bed sheets, and they had a cardboard cutout of Edward Cullen. So it was a real touristy thing.
Yeah,
just to give you that sparkly vampire.
This is so interesting to me because there's obviously so many movies on this film trail. We have, right between the three of us, I think 3 different generations here. And depending on how old you are, you have different connections to different movies. So I don't know anything about Halloween Town. I did not see most of the Twilight movies. For me, it's like Kindergarten Cop, though. When you mentioned that, I was like, oh, Kindergarten Cop. That was like my childhood jam right there. And like Stand By Me, these are the ones that make sense to me. And I'm sure people who are older than me have different associations with different movies,
Oh, for sure. I mean, Animal House, I'm pretty sure they have a plaque in Eugene for that. And again, for people probably of my age, there's a lot of people who have very fond memories of that, or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I mentioned earlier. But for example, one of the things I like about the Oregon Film Trail is just the the geographical breadth. I mean, you can go down to Ashland and see a marker because Wilde filmed there, among other things. But, obviously that was such a high profile film because a Portland-based author wrote the memoir that the movie was based on. Or then you can go over to Baker City and they're commemorating Paint Your Wagon. Not a movie I would recommend. That's just me. It's a little before my time. But anyway, there are people who love it. So I mean, I really love the fact that you can go all over the state and find, memories of movies that, as you say, Jamie, kind of span all sorts of generations and different kinds of really fond memories, I think.
Yeah, and as you kind of were saying, Jamie, we have a good spread of different generations and different interests, but there are definitely some that are really well known more than others, movies filmed in Oregon. What are some of the ones that stand out to you, Kristi?
Well, obviously we've mentioned some of them. Some of the most popular film trail sites kind of correlate to some of the most popular movies. And again, those are things like The Goonies, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. And Astoria just gets more and more invested in making that a part of their tourism identity. And obviously Twilight, big favorite. Animal House, again, there are things you can criticize about Animal House, perhaps things that haven't aged as well as you might hope, but people still like it. And it certainly still has a following. And again, Jamie, you mentioned Stand By Me, and that's a really sweet movie that has really kind of stood the test of time, I think. I mean, I suppose it's dated in some ways, but I think people still really have a soft spot and an affection for that movie. So it's kind of nice to see some of those recognized. And Wild was also quite a good movie, which did film in various places around the state, not just in Ashland, but up by, Bridge of the Gods and kind of various other locations around the state. It's interesting. I mean, if you go way back, you get something like The General, the Buster Keaton movie from the teens that filmed in Cottage Grove. Now that's before all of our times, I think I'm pretty safe in saying, but it's a classic movie. It's a great movie. I do recommend that one if you've never seen it. Buster Keaton, genius.
I believe it's free on YouTube these days.
It probably is.
Yeah.
I think it's in the public domain now because it's more than 50 years old, obviously. But as I say, it has been more than 100 years of filming on location in Oregon. So there are many, many movies to choose from. And I'm sure there are people who have favorite movies that are sort of more obscure than others. But thanks to the Oregon Film Trail, even some of the ones that maybe aren't as well known have their moment of recognition.
What are some of the ones that people might not know that are recognized in the film trail?
Oh gosh, let me think. Probably something like, oh golly. Well, there's the episodes of. Certainly TV shows are part of it. But so for example, Lean on Pete, that's a movie that was really well regarded by critics. Not that many people saw it, but again, it's from a book by an Oregon-based author, and it's recognized in Eastern Oregon. So that's kind of an interesting one. And again, there are, oh gosh, films like Meek's Cutoff that maybe aren't as well known, directed by Kelly Reichert. And that's, that also filmed kind of in the high desert area. Again, not as well known, but worth knowing. So it's something like Phoenix, Oregon. Now there's a movie that, again, probably not a lot of people saw, but it's recognized in Klamath Falls. So it varies quite a bit.
It's so interesting to me, these different filming locations, and the way they can, to me, like they represent such Oregon. Like, and I see them, I'm like, oh, that's Oregon, because I know this place. Like I was watching My Own Private Idaho recently, and there's a scene that you used that's supposed to be Idaho in the setting, and in their shot, there's a big view of Mount Hood right there. And I'm like, as someone who's lived in both those places, it's so obviously not Idaho and so obviously in Oregon, or at least, within shot of Mount Hood. But they can get away with it because not everyone knows this. So it's interesting to me, like what they can get away with in the film industry when shooting in some place like Oregon and calling it any number of different places.
That's a good point because, you mentioned earlier, it's kind of disappointing to see things that are supposedly set in Oregon or in Portland that film in Vancouver, British Columbia. But really, Oregon's landscape is so varied that it can be passed off as all sorts of places. I mean, the coast can be a lot of different places, the whole sort of middle part of the state, the high desert area, that can pose as a lot of places. It's interesting to me that it's kind of like an economic benefit that we have, and that the state is so varied, and it can sort of stand in for locations that aren't necessarily Oregon.
Mm-hmm. And the city, too. I know there's always stuff filming in downtown Portland.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know that Amazon was filming here last year with the series Criminal, that's based on some graphic novels. Has an interesting cast: Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy and Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones, just to name two. I'll be very interested to see that because I don't admittedly know much about it. I don't believe it's set in Portland, but again, we'll see. I could be wrong on that, but I'm very curious to see how the city comes off because they did film all over, and it's apparently kind of a noir-esque story. And Portland could be pretty noir. I mean, if you saw Drugstore Cowboy, you know that the city can look pretty gritty and moody. As you mentioned, My Own Private Idaho has that too. So I'm very interested as this year comes along to sort of see some of the projects that filmed here and how they make us look.
Is Oregon considered sort of a hot filming location? I know that like a lot of the movies in the 90s, it seemed like everything was being filmed here. But like these days, I feel like I'm always seeing Georgia at the end of credits for movies, and
yes.
Vancouver, BC, obviously. Is a lot happening here, or the word be ranking that?
Well, it all has to do with the incentive programs, and these are the programs that state film offices will offer to producers to basically help them save money while they film. They get credits, they get certain amounts, paid back to them in a way, so they can economize. That's a huge factor, and Oregon has its incentive programs, but in no way do we compare it to Georgia. They've made that a real backbone of the state, which is, as you say, why at the end of everything you'll see that little Georgia peach.
Uh-huh.
and Canada, same thing. Canada has prioritized this for years. And so, production studios have built facilities there, studio space. They've got crews. Now, we have a lot of really talented crews here in Oregon who are ready to work, and we have some spaces that can be used also. But it's hard to compete when there are certain states that, again, have made that such a huge thing. There's been an ongoing controversy now in California because, of course, California used to be the center for film and TV filming, and they've lost a lot of business to Canada and Georgia, a couple of other states that have made incentives a big part of their economic program. And now there are forces in California lobbying for the incentives to be boosted there because they're losing so much business. So it remains a really volatile issue. But yeah, I mean, I've interviewed filmmakers who've said, I filmed in Oregon because you guys have a good incentive program, and it really helped us save money.
Can't help that it's it can't hurt that it's not far from California either.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really true because if you're flying into Canada, you've got to have a passport, and then of course Georgia, there's time difference, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's true. I mean, I've also interviewed people who've said they love filming in Oregon because it is so close to LA. You don't need a passport. It's the same time zone. And again, we have really talented crews here.
Yeah. And I'm also curious. I know that when I think about, I'm from Texas, so I think about how we don't have anything like this, but there are definitely some hot spots for filming down there, like our downtown Riverwalk. Are there any like really big touristy places that kind of show up in many films that you know of? Like I think about Multnomah Falls kind of showing up in Twilight as well.
Yeah, that's a popular one that also showed up in Grimm, just off the top of my head. Certainly, Cannon Beach has been really popular. It's shown up in things. I think it was in Point Break, and it's in The Goonies. It shows up quite a bit. That whole sort of coastal northern coastal area is popular. But some of the Central Coast is popular too. Depot Bay we mentioned. And also sometimes the Great Notion filmed around the Siletz River down in Lincoln City. And, Portland has just been very popular because Portland can play a lot of different places. I recently interviewed the director of an independent movie called My Dead Friend Zoe, which is actually a good movie. It's based on his own experiences. He's a veteran. And it's about a woman who's a veteran who is kind of haunted by literally her dead friend Zoe, who she served with in the military. And it's a lot about, veteran struggles with PTSD and survivor guilt and that kind of thing. And it has sequences filmed in Portland. I mean, you don't necessarily look at it and say, wow, 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 that's Portland. But when I spoke to him, he said one of the big reasons why he filmed here was the tax incentives. He said, because an independent film has a lower budget and they are always looking to try to stretch the dollar. So in that case, there was some filming in Portland, and he did a lot of filming in Molalla. Now there's an area that you don't necessarily think, wow, lots of filming, but they needed a cabin on a lake, and there happened to be a cabin on a lake in Molalla. They did a little bit of filming at the Molalla. Is it the Buckaroo, Jamie?
Yeah.
The thing they have on the 4th of July? Yeah. They did a little bit of filming there. So they kind of took advantage of something that was happening already and worked with some of the local folks there. So that was an example of something where they didn't have a lot of money to spend, but they had some money that they were able to spend in Oregon, and they came out with a good little movie.
Now, Kristi, I know you're someone who has worked in as a TV critic, as a film critic. I would love to know a couple of movies that were filmed in Oregon that you feel like are like the top of your list, and at least one or two that you feel like are like overrated.
Oh my goodness.
If you feel interested in doing some hot takes today.
Well, top of my list. Let's see. Well, I mentioned I'm really fond of Stand By Me. That's a really, really sweet movie. And I also am a fan of Wild. I think that's a really effective movie. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, again, there are some things about it that haven't aged really well, but wow, the acting, the writing, it's really, really a good movie in so many ways. I'm not as big a fan of the Goonies as some people are. Jamie, you mentioned, I think when you see a movie, it resonates with you depending on your age when you see it. And obviously I was a little too old to really appreciate the Goonies when it came out. I think it had more of a resonance if you saw it when you were younger. So I think people who were more the age of the characters in that movie just love it like crazy. So for me, I'm like, well, yeah, it's a nice little movie. I don't love it to the same massive degree that they do, but I respect their devotion.
Yeah, it's like, I think with like Kindergarten Cop, I don't think that's a good movie. I haven't seen it since I was like, 6, but I'm pretty sure it's not a good movie. But when it came out, I loved it. I think in part because it was filmed in Oregon, and like I recognized, oh, that's the Oregon coast. And It was like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was huge at the time, playing a comedic role, which was great. And it involved kids. And so like as a kid, that was like catnip for me. I loved that. But yeah, I'm not like, itching to rewatch that movie.
Maybe you should. I don't know. It might hold up. I admit, I think I saw it when it came out. I think I have very hazy memories of that movie. That's probably one I should go back and watch again. I also have to admit to a soft spot for Twilight. I can't make a great argument for it as one of the world's great films, but I'll tell you, it's better than the book. I did have to read the book when I was reporting on Twilight. Not a huge fan of that book, I'll tell you.
Yep. I agree. Movies definitely stand out. And it's not even that they're filmed well. It's just that they were so culturally relevant at the time.
Team Edward.
Exactly. Team
Team
Edward,
Jacob.
Team Jacob.
Yeah, I, yeah, I do have a bit of a soft spot for Twilight. It's just corny as heck, but the locations are great. You know, beautiful shots in the Columbia Gorge, which is, of course, one of my favorite places. How can you live in Oregon and not have it be one of your favorite places? Um, so it's corny, but I like it. I'll watch it if it pops up on TV.
And I know Twilight, the filming of it was such a cultural thing for especially people in my generation. But what are maybe some other TV shows or projects that you know of that are starting to get filmed here? I know we talked about Criminal. Are there any other ones that you think are going to get their own film trail mark yet?
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good question. You know, it's interesting. The business has changed in a way in that it's harder for, say, a network series like Grimm, which was on NBC. Now it's streaming. You can see it on Peacock and that sort of thing. But in those days, it was only on NBC, and that's the only way you could see it. A show like that, coming from a network, had a decent budget, you know, made an economic impact. It's getting harder to attract those kinds of projects, but we have had a lot of streaming shows that have filmed here, and some of them have been quite good. You know, in terms of what's going on, I know there's some stuff that has been filming. I don't really know many details yet. I'm curious to see Night Always Comes, which is coming to Netflix. That filmed here. It's a movie, and it's based on, again, another novel by Willie Vlotten, who wrote Lean on Pete, which I mentioned earlier. Um, and it stars Vanessa Kirby, who was in The Crown. She played the young Princess Margaret in The Crown. And in this, she's a woman who's trying to go to sort of extreme measures to hold on to this home that her family has lived in for years, and she's really up against it financially. So I'm very curious to see that. That's going to be on Netflix, I think, later this year. Um, and gosh, let's see, there were a couple of other things that filmed here recently. Um, let's see, there was Criminal, Night Always Comes. Um, well, those are the ones that come to mind right now.
I imagine too it's hard these days because I mean, as you said, Grimm being on, on NBC, like I mean, it used to be you only saw TV shows on TV and everyone
Right.
had the same set of TV shows and channels, and you only saw movies from like the big studios because that's what came to the theaters. But these days with streaming, I mean, the audiences are so much smaller for everything across the board. It feels like everything has suddenly become so niche, and it's so hard for something to be a cultural force like it used to be.
That's really true. And I mean, there's good things and bad things about it. You know, the audience has just become so fractured. The good thing is that you can probably find something you want to watch on YouTube or on a streaming service or, somewhere that really, really is what you want to see and really clicks neatly with the stuff that you're interested in. But we don't have perhaps as many of these sort of just mass audience phenomena that we used to have where pretty much everybody watched something, or at least a lot of people watch something. I mean, I guess the closest thing we have like that now is maybe Sunday night shows on HBO. But, you have to have a certain income level to either afford HBO or Max, the streaming service. So a lot of people love The Last of Us, but again, you still have to, cough up some money. Same thing for Apple TV Plus. Ted Lasso, hey, it just got renewed. Everybody loves Ted Lasso, but it's not like, well, I can just turn on my TV and I have NBC for free. I don't have to pay extra for CBS or whatever. Which technically you could still do. I mean, most people have some sort of cable, even to get the broadcast channels. But it's kind of a shame that you have to fork over some money to watch Severance on Apple TV Plus, or as I say, Ted Lasso on Apple TV Plus. Fork over money to watch something on Hulu. I mean, I love Only Murders in the Building, but you have to pay money to watch it. And for example, Paramount Plus, I mentioned Happy Face, a streaming series that's going to be launching in a matter of days, and it's based on a true crime case that had Oregon connections. But you got to pay extra for Paramount Plus, so it's kind of a shame that's a factor, but it is.
Yeah, I know that Netflix policy change where you can no longer watch in different homes hit me hard. Someone who still uses their parents' login information.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, and of course Netflix is not hurting. They're not suffering, but during the whole kind of, I don't know, prestige TV thing, which, people tend to think of as the period when shows like, I don't know, Mad Men were around, and there was just Breaking Bad, so many good shows that you could watch. And then that led to sort of this streaming boom because Netflix was having such success, and everybody dove into the pool. NBC dove in with Peacock, CBS with Paramount Plus, et cetera, et cetera. And everybody spent so much money that now they are really pulling back. And that also affects, what shows or movies film locally, because there's just not as much money being spent at the moment, because there was kind of a profligate amount of spending that happened during the streaming wars, as we call them, when everybody was trying to come up with the next Orange is the New Black, or whatever was hot and the thing that everybody had to watch. Now there's still stuff being made, but not as much.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about some of the places in Oregon where things have been shot. I wanted to wrap things up with maybe a question that is maybe selfishly for myself more than anyone else here, but like some places in Oregon that we feel like have not been shown enough in movies. Places that you're like, oh, this we need to have a movie shot. Like, for example, the Painted Hills, right? I don't know if there's you can't really get in there. You can't walk in there, but that would make a great background for something, some sort of high desert thriller or something, or to double as an alien landscape, right? Why aren't we shooting in the Painted Hills? I don't know.
That's a really good point. I mean, because it's true, we do tend to see a lot of the Willamette Valley,
Mm-hmm.
And the coast. And yeah, there's parts of Southern Oregon. I mean, yes, there's Oregon Film Trail sign in Klamath Falls, but it's not like we're seeing a ton of Southern Oregon. Or as you say, kind of the high desert area, Eastern Oregon. I mean, there was, a pretty nice little not streaming movie. It was just kind of another independent movie that shot in LeGrand recently. And that's a beautiful area. There's a beautiful landscapes over there, and we just don't see it that much.
Yeah, I mean, there's like you said, there's so many cool places here. The Oregon Caves, really cool marble cave system. And I'm sure that there's probably some red tape when it comes to filming in a lot of federal land, or state parks. I know even just when we film some stuff for the Oregonian, there's certain permits we have to get sometimes to film in some of these places. So I do wonder if there's some red tape there, but I don't know, just selfishly, I want to see more Oregon in these places. All respect to Georgia, it's not as exciting of a landscape, and I'm sure they got great tax benefits, and I'm happy for them. But let's get some volcanoes out here. Let's get some caves. Let's get some high desert scenery. We've got it all. Let's bring it to the movies.
That LeGrand movie I was mentioning earlier, it's called Breakup Season. And again, it was a sweet little movie. I mean, it sort of almost sounded like a Hallmark holiday movie because it's about a couple that goes to visit a family during the holidays. But it's much more interesting than that. But again, I can't think of that many movies I've seen that filmed in LeGrand, and it was a pleasure to see LeGrand. I know that something recently filmed up on Mount Hood because they wanted extras who were able to ski, and I don't have any good info on what that project is yet. But Mount Hood. I mean, obviously, The Shining filmed the Timberline Lodge, is supposedly the exterior of the Overlook Hotel. Now, obviously, that was not set here, but I still get a kick out of seeing those kind of spooky shots of Timberline Lodge pretending to be the Overlook in The Shining. So it just seems like there's more opportunity to film again, as you say, up in the mountains. It's not easy filming in the snow, obviously, but they could film in the spring in the mountains.
Right? There's opportunities. I think The Shining is a great example too of how, like that the opening shot is in Glacier National Park, and then you get the exterior of the hotel in Oregon, and the interior is shot in Colorado. And just like the way that, all the movies can show such different locations to represent one spot is, I think it's fascinating.
Which it is fascinating. It can be kind of funny because, I think we've all had this experience where something is filmed and you know where it was filmed, and you see somebody crossing the street in one part of the city, and then, across the street they're like 12 miles away in reality. But due to the magic of film, they just crossed the street instead of leaping over 3 county lines.
Oh my gosh. Well, Kristi, to sort of circle back to the Oregon Film Trail itself, I mean, obviously this is a great spot for people who don't know where everything was filmed. I feel like sometimes a curse of too much knowledge of Oregon's landscapes, like in my own private Idaho, made me so furious every time I saw that. But for folks who don't know where things were filmed, it seems like the Oregon Film Trail is a great place to learn more about that. Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to embark on this, in any way they should explore it or a way to find more information?
Well, obviously there is the Oregon Film website, which has extensive lists and maps of everywhere that the Oregon Film Trail has signs and markers. So you can do that. And as I say, once you're actually out there, the SetJetter app is something you can download that will give you a bit more information about the area. And I know that the Oregon Film Office right now is working on the Oregon Film Trail Oral History Project. They're asking people who live in some of the communities where filming has happened to sort of share their experiences and their stories, and the idea is that that's going to be compiled into a resource that will have even more information. So it seems like there's even more information coming about these locations all around the state and their connections to films that we may know.
Absolutely. I feel like there's so many things I learned today as someone who is just not very familiar with this film trail. So thank you so much for just enlightening us and all of our listeners. And thanks for joining us today, Kristi. It was great having you.
Oh, it's really a pleasure. Really, really fun to talk to you guys.
Well, folks, that will do it for us for today. Until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonian's YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as HereIsOregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoy the show, and if you want to support this podcast as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find details at OregonLive.com/podsupport. Also, if you're a fan of the show and interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@Oregonian.com. This episode of the show was produced by me alongside Jamie Hale and Vicky Connor.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.